We're doing the written expressions again. And with this, it's asking you to circle the expression that is equivalent to the sum of 3 and 2 divided by 1/3. So the sum of 3 and 2 divided by 1/3. So that tells me when I've got divided by in the back, then I've got something divided by 1/3. So it's something divided by 1/3. Here on my table. So something divided by 1/3. So what is being divided by 1/3? The sum of 3 and 2. What is sum? Addition. So 3 plus 2. So when it's the sum of 3 and 2, what do you have to make sure? Put it up. What do you have to make sure that you do with 3 and 2? Is it asking you to solve anything? What do you have to make sure?
Show that it goes first. You need the parentheses.
Parentheses to make that this is what would be done first. Because if I don't, then I would do 2 divided by 1/3 first. Order of operations. I don't want 2 divided by 1/3. I need to do the sum of 3 and 2 first. Because parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. I would divide before I add if I did not do my parentheses around 3 plus 2. So the sum of 3 and 2 divided by 1/3. So which ones would you have circled if you had something that looked or was going to work like this? Which one would you circle, Eli?
Number 3.
Okay, so you would do the 3rd one. Are there any more? Tamaya? The 4th one, do you agree or disagree?
No, because it's 1/3 divided by 5, not 5. Why is it divided by 1/3?
Right, because this one is 1/3 divided by the sum of 3 and 2. It's totally different. 1/3 divided by. So this one is the sum of 3 and 2 divided by 1/3. You would get a totally different answer.
Oh, yeah, because division is one of those things that you can.
Right, division is the one thing that you can, division and subtraction, those are the things that you cannot flip-flop. Is there another one that you can do?
What? Yeah, because you said that fractions are basically divided.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why do I keep on finding pixels?
Why would this one work?
Because that's division.
Well, it is division, but why would that work? Why would that work? Okay, that's a way that I divide fractions, but why do you think that would work?
Something starts, whatever you just said, and then, yeah.
Without even working it. Because it's not asking you to do any kind of work. Why do you think, without doing any computation at all, Why would this work?
Because it's 3 plus 2 is 5. And it's like, she said not work by.
Huh? Without working it.
Because how is this doing times 1/3? Because you're technically dividing it by 3 and you're going to get 1/3. What? I'm confused. What did you just say? You just add. It's the same as multiplying 1/3 times that. Except you're just dividing. Okay. Since you're dividing it into 3 pieces, you're taking one section, you're getting 1/3. I see what Court's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because 3 plus 2 is 5. So it's just saying it's kind of saying like 5 times 1. So it's going to be 5 thirds.
Same thing. Dividing it by 3 is the same thing as dividing it by 1 over 3. Same thing. Because 1/3 and dividing it by 3 is the same.
Are you going to have the word result that you get to?
No.
Okay.
Because they're going to give you the expression and you just have to choose either the statement that matches it or they're going to give you the statement and you have to choose the expression that matches it. Circle the expressions equivalent to 28 divided by the difference between 4/5 and 7/10. Kylie, what's one that you picked?
What? Yeah. I picked 1 and 4. I picked 1, 2, 1 and 2. I did pick 2.
So 28 divided by, so this would be divided by, when you're going to do that, you need to do it. The difference between 4/5 and 7/10. Can you flip-flop subtraction? You will get a negative number. You cannot flip-flop subtraction. One is negative and one is not. So I cannot flip-flop these numbers. If it's got 4/5 and 7/10, the difference between 4/5 and 7/10, you have to keep them in that order. This one, flip-flop them. So you cannot pick the fourth one. Yeah, it's got 28 divided by, but it flip-flopped your subtraction, so you cannot pick that one. So it would be the first one and the second one. How do you know 7/10? If you do common denominator, common denominator. 7 minus 8, negative 1. So 4/5 is larger than 7/10. Yes. Yes. We just don't do it in 5th grade. You'll do it in middle school. So 28, your fraction line is divided by. Whenever we have improper fractions, if you have this, isn't that 28 divided by 4?
Yeah.
And you get 7?
Yeah.
So this is 28 divided by the difference of 4/5 and 7/10. So it's the first two. That fraction line is your divided by line. Is that a question, or are you playing with your hair? Oh, I need to move this. Fill in the chart by writing an equivalent numerical expression. It's not asking you to solve it, it's just asking you to write the number sentence. Just like here, the expression, they want you to write the expression. Okay. So, half as much as the difference between 2 1/4 and 3/8. That's what the two different color highlighters. You don't have to do it, it's just, it helps you isolate. The difference between 2 1/4 and 3/8 divided by 4. A third of the sum, the sum of 7/8 and 22/10. That one they're kind of adding in some number words. Add 2 2/10 and 7/8. They put a decimal and a fraction. You're going to have to change something. So that would need to be something else. And then triple the sum. Half as much as the difference between 2 1/4 and 3/8. Well, I know that the difference between this, that means subtract. So I know that I need to take 2 1/4 and 3/8 and subtract. Okay. Half as much. Well, if I've got to do 3 times as much, 2 times as much, then what am I doing? What am I doing? Times. I'm doing multiply. If it's half as much, what are you still doing? Multiplying by 1/2. It's the same thing, it's just a different number. Half as much. 2 times as much, 3 times as much, 4 times as much. You would just be multiplying by a whole number. This time it's half as much. So you're just multiplying by a half. 1/3 as much. You would be multiplying by a third. Half as much as. The difference between 2 1/4 and 3/8. So I know that with those two numbers, I am subtracting. Very good. I'm subtracting. 2 1/4, 3/8 divided by 4. Divided by 4. A third of. So what are you doing? Adding. 1/3 of. The sum of 7/8 and 22/10. You write it. Yes, it's improper. When it's in the work, it can be improper. If it's 22/10, you can take it like that. But if it's 22/10, how do you write that? 22/10. You write it like you say it. You write it like you say it. 22/10. 22/10. Because you can't add a fraction and a decimal. Can you add a fraction and a decimal? Can you subtract a fraction and a decimal? No. So you need to write it like a fraction. 22 over 10. 22 tenths. There should be a nickel in there, and it's Sarah's. Add 2 and, remember the decimal is and 2 tenths. 2 and 2 tenths. When you say it, it sounds like a mixed fraction. It should. 2 and 2 tenths. Add that and 7 eighths. And then triple the sum. What does that mean? Times 3. Multiply by 3. Compare expressions 3a and 3b without evaluating. What does evaluate mean?
Don't solve it.
Don't solve it. They don't want you to work it. Identify the expression that's greater. They have the same, pretty much the same numbers. Which one do you think would be greater? So we have 1/2 times 2 1/4 minus 3/8. And then we have 2 1/4 minus 3/8 divided by 4. So which one would have the larger answer without working it? Which one would have the bigger answer? So A or B? Which one would have the larger answer? A or B? So why are you saying A? Because you have to explain how you know.
Well, it might be B. A is greater because it's dividing it into 2 pieces rather than 4 pieces.
A is greater because it's only dividing it into 2 pieces, where B is dividing it into 4 pieces. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand. This one is only dividing it into half. If you, like, say, for example, I just have any given number. This is a number. Number squared. And I go, bam, I divided it into 2 pieces. When you're multiplying by a half, you're dividing it by 2. Right? I went, oh, this is same exact number. This one you're dividing it by 4. So which one are you getting the larger answer? So if I actually worked it, just to prove a point. So, all right. How would you do B? How would you write that?
I'm not worried, but the difference of product of 1/8 and what I said that was 0.5. I think.
Okay. You do the product of, you don't have, there's 2 ways you can write this one. The product of 1/8 and 2/10 subtracted from 7/9. Or, I'm gonna do B down here. Or, nope, subtracted from. Subtracted from means from the front. Or 7/9 minus the product of 1/8 and 2/10. Subtracted from 2/10. Ay, 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 ay. When it says subtracted from means that number goes in the front. You stop playing with your pencil? You started mumbling. But when you just said 5, I don't know what your 7/9, what it meant. Okay, what about C? Anyone write C? Yes, Mia. Oh, wait. C.
Oh, that thing?
I didn't say 6, I said C. What? The sum of what?
Sum of 1 and 75
So the sum of 1 and 75/100 and 3/5 multiplied by 3/5. Oh, 4/3. Sorry, 4/3. There's more than one way you can write this stuff. So now, is there a wrong way you can write this? Yes. So you have to be very careful how you're writing it. It has to show what is going on in the expression. It has to say that you are adding 1 and 75/100 and 3/5, and that you are multiplying 4/3 on the outside. And then B. Kylie. Okay, I'm going to change one little thing. The product of. I'm just adding that in. 2 divided by. When you've got that 2 divided by, that tells me that 2 goes in the front. 2 divided by the product of 1/2 and 4/5. Compare the expressions of 5A and 5C without evaluating. It means don't solve it. Identify the expression that is less. Explain how you know. So 5A and 5C, which one is less? So 3/4. There's too much stuff to look at up there. Times the sum of 1 and 75/100 and 3/5. Or 1 and 75/100 plus 3/5 times 4/3. So the numbers in the parentheses are the same.
Oh, I figured it out.
This goes back to something that we did and we tested.
Yeah.
So which one has a product that is less? Is it A or is it C? And you have to be able to tell me how you know. How do you know which one is less? And you should not get this wrong. We took a whole test on this. Quinn?
Just changing where 4/3. No way, I just realized.
I see it. Shame on you, Quinn. Shame, shame. Know your name. You're on math team? Gosh, Quinn.
For some reason, I was thinking this half was 4/3.
No, Quinn. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Kelsey. Which one?
It's less. That's what I have to make. Because I know the problem stuff.
Less. Which one is less? Less. I only read that problem 3 times. Why? Would you stop, please? I cannot hear. My word, Tamaya. Go ahead, Tamaya.
A, because 3 foot less than 1. Yes.
Scaling. We took a whole test on that. Because 3/4 is less than 1, this gets smaller. 4/3 is greater than 1, that over there gets bigger. These numbers are the same. If I multiplied it by 3/3, it would say exactly the same. Shame. For shame.
That was first.
Oh, we all make mistakes. It's too bad it happened while I was recording. Okay. Now, on this one, now it actually says to evaluate. On these, you need to find out what is the problem worth. What is the value of the expression? This one is telling you to actually solve it. So, the difference of 9 and 5 divided by 1/3. The product of 2 and 1/4 multiplied by 5/3. The quotient of 1 and 1/4. 1/3 divided by the quotient of 1 and 1/4. What are the answers of those 3 problems? You need to know how to multiply and divide fractions. That's all we've been doing all quarter long. Unfortunately, some of y'all still managed to get that stuff out. You should all get the same answer. What answer did you get for problem A? Just tell me. 12. You should have got 12. I worked all 3. Okay. So you do the parentheses first. 4 divided by 1/3. Keep, switch, flip. 4 times 3 over 1, so you end up with 12. That's what you should have got. 12. What did you get for B? Rail, you're my new best friend.
What?
Yeah, I get a best friend every day. Today is Terrell. Because he actually answered the question. I only heard Terrell.
What did he say?
He said 10/12, and then he simplified it and said 5/6.
Yep, that's what I said. I said 5/6. I didn't do it.
Parentheses first. 2 times 1/4. So you get 2/4. 5/3 times 2/4. There shouldn't be all this erasing going on. 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 4 is 12. And you can simplify that by 2.
I got
5, 6.
I didn't do that. I never said 2/4 equals 1/2, so I just said cut it in the middle of
5, 6. What did you get for the last one?
1/12.
1/12.
Yeah.
1/12. 1 divided by 1/4. Keep, switch, flip. 1 times 4 is 4. 1/3 divided by 4 over 1. Keep, switch, flip. We just finished doing dividing fractions. We just finished it. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 4 is 12. 1/12. I know I should have showed my scripts. 1/12.
I would have had it right if I wasn't still.
I would have too.
I would have had it right if I hadn't messed up. Well, that's normally the way it goes.
I just messed up on the last one.
Okay. Is that where we are? Yeah. Choose an expression below. That's where we are, right?
No. Go right here.
Did it accidentally skip a question? 7. Oh, I must have accidentally skipped that. No, I accidentally skipped it.
I don't think you have it.
That's what I'm saying. I skipped it.
Oh, I thought you had like 3.
Okay. So let me see what that is.
I got 1/12.
So y'all are seriously giving me an unsimplified fraction yet again? 1/2. I got 1/2. So you go left to right. 1/2 times 3. You can't multiply 3 numbers all at the same time. You do have to do 2 at a time. Right.
Really?
So you can only do 2 things. So 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 5 is 10. Then you have to do 5/3, 15/30. You can only do 2 numbers at a time.
Still work though. See, I got 15.
15/30 is 1/2 because 15 goes into 30 2 times. Now, while I was looking at it, I noticed I could 2.0 it. I saved myself a lot of work. 5 goes into 5. 3 goes into 3. 1/2. And that's what I said. I went, huh. Right when I was like, look at that. Save myself any work at all. But some people cannot do 2.0 correctly, so they should not do that.
Oh, okay, I see.
See, Tamaya, you're like a 2.0 queen. You do it all the time.
Yeah, I see.
Half as much as 3/4 and 2/10. You do not do a decimal and a fraction in the same problem. So you would either do 2 decimals or 2 fractions. You would have to do either one. What did you get for an answer? Huh? 3/40.
Yes.
You got 6/80. Shame on you for not noticing that those were 2 even numbers and you needed to simplify it.
I got 3/40.
3/40.
And then I had 2/40. Then I had that.
So 1/2. You need to turn this into a fraction. 3/4. How do you say this? 2/10. That's how you write it. Decimal 2 is 2 over 10. 2/10. So 1/2. 3 times 2. 6. 4 times 10. 40. Oh, why did I do that? Did not need that. 1 times 6. 6. 2 times 40. 80. Divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 80 divided by 2, 40. 3 40ths. Or you could have noticed that 2 could go into 6 in 2.0. I worked this problem 2 different ways because I saw 2 different ways that it could have been solved. And actually, the first way I solved it was way easier than the second one. So, I'm going to show you both ways. 3 times as much as the quotient of, which means division, divide, 2 and 4/10 and 6/10. Did y'all get an answer for this?
Yes.
So y'all are like, no. If you got an answer, what'd you get?
4.
Not 4.
Six.
No. What'd you get? No.
1.0.
It's 12.
What?
It's 12. So I will show you how to get it, and you're going to go, oh. All right. So watch. Watch and learn. Okay? Watch. So, watching, looking up. So, if you keep these as decimals, because I don't have any fractions, and I've got 2 decimals, I can keep those decimals. If you had a decimal in your answer, there was just one thing you didn't do. Decimal on the outside, decimal on the inside. You cannot divide with the decimal on the outside. I've taught you this. It's just been a while. You forgot. You have to move it. If you move it on the outside, you have to move it on the inside. I move it over 1 spot. So then I have to move it over 1 spot. So now it's 6 going into 24. It's not 6 divided by 24. It's 24 divided by 6. How many times can 6 go into 24? 4. That's my answer for 2 and 4/10 divided by 6/10.
And then 3 times 4 is 20.
3 times 4 equals 12. It's easier than doing the fractions. You can do the fractions. I'm going to show you how to do it with the fractions. All right. So I'm going to extend the page to show you how to do it with the fractions because these markers are so thick. So with the 3 times 2 and 4/10 divided by 6/10, I'm going to show you with the fractions. You can do it with fractions. Okay? Please put the chair down. So 3 times 2 and 4/10. That's how you would write that as a fraction. 2 and, because the 2 is a whole number, 2 ones, and 4/10. Kylie, am I boring you? Your watch is not that interesting. Divided by 6/10. How you say it is how you would write it. You cannot multiply or divide mixed fractions. You would get your hands off of your head so that the people behind you can see. Get off of your feet so that the people behind you can see. You are in the front. You have to turn this into an improper fraction. 10 times 2 is 20 plus 4 is 24 over 10. 24/10. Divided by 6/10. Keep, switch, flip.
So it'll be 6.
You can 2.0 this 10/10.
1. 6 and 24.
Yeah, 6 and 24.
24 divided by 6 is 4. So now you've got 3 times 4. So it was actually easier doing the decimals up top. So the only reason why I did the decimal to a fraction here was because I had a whole mess of fractions. Here, all I had were decimals, so I just kept the decimals. Choose an expression below that matches the story problem and write it on the blank. So Farmer Green picked 20 carrots. He cooked 2/3 of them and gave 5 to his rabbits. So which one of those expressions would go with this problem? You're supposed to choose it and write it on the line. So he had 20 carrots, he cooked 2/3 of them, and then gave 5 to his rabbits. One of those expressions you would use to solve that problem. You should have one of them. You should have one of them on that line. You can circle it, and then we can discuss it. Which one you think would actually solve that problem? So, do you think it's A, B, C, or D? So we know that there needs to be a 20. He cooks 2/3 of them. So which one do we know it is not? So we know it's not A.
Yes.
Okay, so we can take off A. I agree it's not A.
It's not.
Why is it not B?
Because.
You can't tell me because. Because he's got 2/3 twice. So you have to decide between C or D.
D, because he did say, exactly. If I can write it up, what is that tracking?
A fraction of a number, what are you supposed to do?
Multiply.
A fraction of, what are you supposed to do?
Multiply.
2, it doesn't have to be in parentheses. I prefer, if I wrote it, I would have done this. However, you would still do 2/3 times 20 first. Even though it's written like this, just because they've got parentheses, would you really do 20 minus 2/3? Would you really? Does that make sense? Were you just looking because you would choose it just because it had parentheses?
No. I told him because he had
2/3 of the 20 carrots. You have to listen to the problem. When there's a fraction of a number, what do? You multiply every time. 2/3 of a number, 5/8 of the soil. She did 1/2 of her whatever. It's multiply every time.
What about someone?
How would you solve that? But just because there's no parentheses, you would still multiply first because, bless you, because parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract, you would still do this first because you multiply and divide before you add or subtract, even though there are no parentheses in this problem. I gave you a chart that's already got an order of operations on it. You got it. Now, if I had 20 minus 5, yeah, I would do that first. But I'm not doing 2/3 of 20 minus 5. I'm doing 2/3 of 20 because there's no parentheses. I would do 2/3 of the 20 minus 5 because of my order of operations. So 2/3 of the carrots then gave 5 to the rabbits.
Now A is B.
Farmer Green picked 20 carrots. He cooked 5 of them, then gave 2/3 of the remaining carrots to his rabbits. Which expression would solve that one?
Say 5.
A.
Say
So
5.
pick 20, cooked,
5.
fraction of. Is 5 a fraction?
No.
He cooked 5 of them, then gave 2/3 of the remaining carrots.
2/3 times 20 minus 5 and put the parentheses around 20 minus 5.
So A, B, C, or D?
A.
No.
It's A.
It's A.
Definitely A.
So we think it's this one?
Yeah.
I think it is.
I think it's. But you're still.
Because you're doing now.
He had 20. He cooked 5.
Because it has parentheses, you're doing minus 5 first, and then you're going to be doing the 2/3 times.
So he had 20.
Which is the same as.
Cooked 5.
Yeah, but
Had 20. Cooked 5. So you've got 5 less, right?
yeah.
Then gave 2/3 of the remaining carrots to his rabbits. Write an expression that tells how many carrots the rabbits will get. If he's going to get 2/3 of what's left, is there an expression that looks something kind of like this?
Yes. For A.
Hey, that would be 2/3 of 20 and 2/3 of 5, and then you're subtracting both of those. That doesn't match anything. 20 minus 2/3 minus 5, that doesn't match anything. So it would be this one. 2/3 of the 20 minus the 5 that he already took out.